The Jacket by Andrew Clements. Part 3. Close to Home. Now that he was in 6th grade, Phil walked home from school after basketball practice. It was only 6 blocks. Sometimes he walked home with a friend or two, sometimes on his own. And on the days when it wasn't pouring rain or bitterly cold, he enjoyed it. He liked to take his time getting home, sometimes going a block or two out of his way to walk through the little shopping area near his house. If he had some money, he'd stop and buy gum, or maybe a donut. And he always liked just looking around, letting his mind wander along with his eyes. But walking home by himself this particular Thursday afternoon, Phil felt like he'd never seen this part of the city before. Everywhere he looked, he saw white people. He saw moms driving cars full of kids home from school, white moms and white kids. He saw the neat row houses with tiny front yards where kids had dropped their sleds and little shovels after it snowed last week. Their snowmen and snow forts were half melted now. Phil thought back to the spring and summer when all the little kids had been outside playing, and he tried to remember seeing an African American kid, and he couldn't. There were larger homes too, homes with real driveways and garages and small lawns, some of them surrounded with fancy iron fences. This time of year, in addition to the "Beware of Dog" signs and the security systems notices, the fences were decorated with red ribbons and Christmas wreaths. Page 34. Phil looked around as he walked, and he tried to think if any black families lived anywhere in his neighborhood, and he couldn't think of one, not one family, not ever. Phil turned at the corner of Belden Street so he could walk through the shopping area. The small trees that lined the street were covered with blinking lights, and the storefronts and shop windows were decorated for Christmas. The sidewalks were busier than usual, not crowded, but still there were lots of people, lots of white people. Not everyone was white, of course. Phil saw a few Asian people, women mostly, dressed nicely, carrying shopping bags, plus some Asian kids, junior high school girls. And he saw a high school boy who might have been Hispanic. It was hard to tell. There were some black people in the shopping area too, but not many. Phil counted as he walked along. He saw 4 black people, 1 man and 3 women. The man was driving a bus, but Phil counted him anyway. None of the black women on the sidewalks looked like they had been shopping today. No bags or packages. They weren't browsing, weren't looking in the store windows. They all looked like they were going somewhere else. In fact, 2 of the black women were waiting at a bus stop, waiting to get on a bus to go somewhere else, just like the black kids at school. And Phil thought, I can tell those women don't live close by. Page 36. They just don't look like they belong here. And Phil heard himself. He heard himself thinking that thought. They just don't look like they belong here. Phil stopped so suddenly that a man behind him on the sidewalk almost knocked him down. Whoa, the man said. Sorry there, young fella. You all right? Phil nodded absently and said, Yeah, I'm fine. But it wasn't true. Phil wasn't all right. He stood on the sidewalk, staring as the 2 women got onto their bus, and he thought, this morning, what if Daniel had been a white kid? Would I have grabbed him like that? If he had looked like he belonged in that jacket, would I have said he stole it? The bus pulled away from the curb, and Phil started walking again. Turning a corner, he looked up and saw his own reflection in a shop window. He saw a white kid who looked like he belonged here. Phil turned away from the window. He began to run, and he didn't stop until he got home. When his mom opened the front door at 5:15, Phil was waiting for her. How come you never told me I was prejudiced? His mom set a grocery bag on the floor and looked at him. What? What are you talking about? I'm prejudiced. I am. And you never told me. Who says you're prejudiced? Somebody call you that? No, but it's true. I know what it means because we learned about it on Martin Luther King Day. It means you don't like black people. All right, his mom said, just hold it right there. Page 38. Let me get my coat off, then come into the kitchen with me and tell me what this is all about. So as his mom started making dinner, Phil sat on a stool at the tall counter and told her what had happened at school. When he got to the part in the principal's office where Daniel threw his jacket down, she clucked her tongue and said, "Poor dear, he must have felt so embarrassed." Then Phil told about walking home. "No black people live around here, Mom. None. And when I saw these black ladies in front of the bakery, like waiting for a bus, I said to myself, they don't belong here." Just like that. Like I belong here because I'm white and they don't because they're black. So that's prejudiced, right? I'm prejudiced and I didn't even know it. Standing at the stove, his mom said, "But you're not prejudiced, honey. Stop saying that." Phil shook his head. "But it's true. I think I am." "Well, take it from me, you're not. It's all in your imagination. You're not prejudiced. You're just a kid. And you're a good kid, too. You had this problem with another boy, and the boy happens to be black. That's all. And we live in a part of town where it's mostly white people. Tell me this. Did you choose to live here?" "No." "See, you've got nothing to do with it. Did you even choose to be white? Is it your fault?" "Well, no." "Exactly. Now stop worrying about this and set the table. First, go wash your hands and knock on Juliana's door and tell her to come help me get the supper on." Page 40. Phil started to climb off the stool and then stopped. "How come you gave Lucy that jacket?" "Because it's a perfectly good jacket, and Jimmy didn't want it, and I knew Lucy had a grandson who might fit it." "You knew Lucy had a grandson?" "Sure I knew." "And you didn't give it to her because she's poor and black?" "No, of course not. Your old blue blazer from 4th grade? I just gave that to Mickey Coulter's mom, and you know they're not poor, and they're not black either. When you have something nice to share, you share. Besides, Lucy's my friend." Phil nodded. "Only not really your friend, right?" His mom looked at him sternly. "What's that supposed to mean? I mean, if she's really a friend, then like you'd go to the movies with her sometimes, right? Or have her over for dinner with her family, or maybe go bowling like you do with Mrs. Donato." His mom tilted her head, choosing her words carefully. "Well, right. Lucy's not that kind of friend. Not really a close friend. More like someone you know at work." "So, have you ever had a friend who's black? I mean, a close friend?" "No, not really." "How come?" "It just never happened, that's all." "Maybe it's because you're prejudiced too. Like me. And you didn't know it, like me. For the last time, Phil, you are not prejudiced. Now just forget about it. Go get your sister to come down here right now." Phil knew that tone of voice. Turn the page. It meant end of discussion. He got off the stool and was going out the door. Stop when his mom said, He got off the stool and was going out the doorway when his mom said, "And Philip, let's not talk about this to your dad." He turned around and looked at her. "Why?" Because it'll just upset him. That's why. That's all." "How come?" "Because I know your father, and it just will. Okay, that's all." Phil shrugged, then turned and headed for the doorway. He didn't ask how come again. He didn't have to. He was pretty sure he knew why his dad would get upset. There was only one answer Phil could think of. It had to be because his dad is prejudiced, like me.